and we're being promised, what is it, rolling of the dice, things that are going to blow us away, planting of new seeds. What are they going to be, Mark?
It's a good question. Yes, we are here outside the Steve Jobs Theater, like you said. And Tim Cook was asked a very interesting question. I thought it was one of the more fascinating ones. Does Apple take enough risks with its new products? And that's really important because we've seen the iPhone take up so much of Apple revenues, and we had the sales slowdown at the end of last year. So it is an important question. Cook basically said there's a lot of things that the company is now working on. He called one of the products that he's working on blow away. Another thing he said, there's strong roadmaps in place for the AirPods and Apple Watch. But this was really important because it shows that Apple might be becoming more bold in its approach to new products, whereas before they really weren't as bold. They were saying no to many things. And he said they didn't talk about all these things because they don't know what may or may not work out in the end.
What's interesting in your story, too, is that Apple bought 18 companies in 2018. We don't tend to cover them because they're small acquisitions. They're not necessarily brand names. It's not like Apple goes out and buys Beats every year or anything like that. What can you tell us about whether that's a strategy to coming out with the next don't miss product?
Right, so what Apple likes to do is buy smaller companies that it can turn into components of major products. And I'm talking about smaller things. For example, they bought a security company many years ago called Authentech, which ended up being the fingerprint sensor. They bought a company called PrimeSense, which ended up being Face ID. They bought a company called Siri, which ended up being Siri. So they buy companies that become key features of their future products, but they haven't made any major acquisitions. I guess you can say Beats for $3 billion is a major one, but it's nothing like buying a Netflix.
He also had to field questions about privacy, about diversity, about politics. Mark, anything strike you as really interesting as what Tim Cook had to say about these sorts of things?
You know, the biggest topic of discussion, whether that was from Cook or different shareholders or proposals, was about diversity. There was one very controversial proposal that Apple actually asked shareholders to vote against that was about disclosing the political or ideological leanings of their board members. And one shareholder proposal wanted them to come out with a chart that basically indicated the political leanings of their shareholder of the board members. And Cook basically said that Apple is not a political company. One other shareholder raised their hand to point out that despite Apple not really agreeing with the Trump administration in terms of politics, they have been able to navigate those waters, whether that's the trade war or tariffs or other things so far.
And of course, it wouldn't be Apple if we didn't talk about products and the next big product. Augmented reality glasses is something that I know you've discussed before. Did we learn anything new from Tim Cook on that?
You know, Cook said they have a strong roadmap ahead for wearables. He didn't really dive into AR as he typically does. One thing he talked a lot about, actually, perhaps the most amount of time was spent on the company's in-house chip efforts. These are the processors that power the speed of the Mac, the iPhone, and the iPad. And he said that the company's working on chips that are only going to come out in 4 to 5 years already today.